And plus, it also divides the Confederacy from Texas to the east part of it. So now they're split in half if this were to happen. And the idea of going up north is that it will force the Union to pull troops from that siege in order to deal with Lee. It would help also win a decisive battle in the north. This is a very good thing for the South because the North was continuing to waver on, like, with two massive failures. A defeat up north would be a massive blow to Union morale. Gain international support was a huge thing. France was on the verge before Battle of Gettysburg. France was considering about siding with the Confederacy. They were thinking about sending in aid and also like claiming them as a legit nation. So if the battle would have gone differently, France would have most likely stepped in and also get supplies for the Army of Northern Virginia. The difference between the North and the South, as many of you remember from your other classes, is that the North is very industrial. The North has pretty much almost all of the factories and are able to supply and well equip their troops. The South, they mostly make luxury goods. They make cash crops. They're very good for trade, but you can't really feed an army from cotton and tobacco. And so therefore, making these raids up north will help supply Lee's army. Next one. So, first day of battle. On July 1st, 1863, a Confederate division made contact with two Union cavalry brigades, and the fighting began in the morning. Lee's cavalry was off doing raiding in another part. They didn't have good reconnaissance, so when they made contact with them, Lee didn't know this was just a small cavalry brigade. And therefore, he thought that he met the main force. So that way, Lee decided to commit his entire army to attack these Union troops. And he made them push right through the town, as you see, from the outskirts. And the Union was fighting over like a retreating battle up to the hills. The Union troops, uncharacteristically this time, are outnumbered by Lee. Most of the time, the Union would always outnumber the Confederates. This time, the tables are flipped. And the Union forces have been pushed out of the city of Gettysburg themselves. They've been fighting from street to street, but they couldn't hold on to the town. And so they had to retreat over to Cemetery Hill. Now, Lee instructs General Ewell to take the hill if practical. Now, can someone tell me what's the problem with saying if practical in a command of wanting to take a position to another general? Someone tell me what was the big problem with that? Yes?
If practical, we may take it a lot of different ways.
Exactly. Thank you for volunteering. Exactly. See, the big problem with if practical is there's no real pressure to make a decision. If practical, I can probably say, I can observe the post and say, I see there's a bunch of guys over there. I'm not really going to feel comfortable in sending in my corps to go take that hill. If General Ewell took the initiative and assaulted that, he would have been able to most likely win the Battle of Gettysburg before it would even happen into the massive scale that it was that we know to this day. And another of the big consequences of Stonewall Jackson dying is that Stonewall Jackson would have probably understood what General Lee would have been talking about. General Lee often would talk in a very open-ended way on how he would present his orders. So if possible, General Lee would probably tell Stonewall Jackson that, and Stonewall Jackson would probably know that, by the reconnaissance that he understands and by what he knows of the enemy, he should attack real soon and do it fast before an enemy comes in through the main road over there and resupplies them. but General Eo is very cautious, and he's very unoriginal. And so he just stands there and waits. This loss of momentum allows the Union forces the ability to trickle in more troops. And this will happen as the days continue. More troops will continue to come in. Lee, on the first day, outnumbered the Union by about 4,000 troops. This will change by the end of the next day. And for here, I have a little bit of a video on what the weapons that they shot. Has anyone here ever been to Gettysburg? You been to Gettysburg?
I know.
Yeah, okay. How was that?
Eerie.
Eerie? Yeah. So, you'll be, on the next slide, you'll be able to understand more of what I'm talking about. But have you ever been able, has anyone here shot a musket? Okay, so when I went to Wyoming, one of my friends that made an army, we went over to his gun range and we were able to shoot a couple of Civil War muskets. And this is one of the videos of me shooting it. Here we go. Oh. What the? That didn't work. Oh no. Oh well. I would have liked to show you exactly. Just click on this. There we go. Let me fix this real quick. I'm sorry, guys. And okay. Well, I'd really love to show you the video of what it's like to shoot a musket. But to give you a bit of a description of it, the musket was about, if I were to put the butt end on the ground and the barrel to like the top, it would be right here. And so you'd have soldiers like carrying it up here, marching the massive columns. And you would, at most, if you were a really good soldier, you'd be able to shoot that about 3 times a minute. So it was like warfare was very slow paced, but like methodical at the same time. So here we go, next slide. Day 2. The next morning, Lee gathers his generals for the upcoming assault on the Union position. Now, much to against the advice of his other generals, he decides to go for a full-on general assault. And besides, he doesn't really have, as we mentioned, the cavalry conducting reconnaissance on the enemy position. So he assumes that he doesn't know that the new reinforcements have come in. He's just assuming that he's planning on what they came in at the very beginning. So he's going on this assumption of, oh, we outnumber them. Let's just go in for a full-on assault. And so he decides to go a little bit more methodical and decides to go and do more of a classic pincer maneuver. He wants to distract the Union by having on the Union's left just a small attack, like a small corps, launching an attack on their left. But however, he wants the main assault to come right through with Longstreet on the Union right. However, communication, as you see, on how, do you remember, have you walked an entire battlefield?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can tell, so you know it's pretty big, right? Lee, he has to, in order for information to go from here to here to here, if you were to go all the way here, that'd be 6 miles. Meade, all he needs to do, 2 miles. Communication is key, especially in a time where there's no radios. So you had to make sure that that information came in fast. So he doesn't get the information that the attack is happening until Longstreet is already on the move. So that diversionary force isn't really doing anything at that point. So they're pretty much prepared for that diversionary force to come in. By that point, the right is already engaged, and the left is too. Speaking of the left, General Sickle, for some reason, most historians don't know why, he would write on that it was because he wanted to overextend or force Lee to continue to funnel more troops into his position, but most people would assume that he was just a mad lad and didn't really care much, but he moved off Cemetery Ridge, where the giant hook of the defense was made. He moved him off. This meant that there was a huge gap, as you can see, right here. From here to here, there was a wide open space. And the Confederates punished him real bad for that. Like, by the end of that, we were looking at about casualties of like